My name is Detective Pierce. Some know me as a man who hunts the shadows. Others say I have no place among the living because I spend too much time with the dead. I do not argue. My life is built on finding what lurks behind curtains most would rather keep shut. Yet even I sometimes crave silence, a reprieve from the ceaseless pull of tragedy and the whisper of corpses. That craving led me here, though I suspect I should have known better. It was late autumn when I boarded the Trans-Northern Express. The newspapers called it a marvel of modern engineering, polished iron, sleek wood-paneled carriages, a locomotive that cut through fog and mountain passes alike. The kind of train designed to impress diplomats and wealthy patrons rather than carry the common traveler. The company had invited me to join the inaugural journey, disguised as a guest, though I knew well enough it was also a favor from someone who thought I deserved rest. The platform itself reeked of smoke and rain. A storm loomed in the distance, thunder crawling across the sky like a warning. My ticket was crisp, the ink still smelling fresh. I stepped into the first-class carriage and felt the warmth of velvet seats, mahogany trim, polished brass. Passengers laughed politely over glasses of champagne. A quartet played in the dining car, attendants hurried with trays. It felt more like a floating palace than a train. And yet, beneath the gleam, something unsettled me. The air felt heavy. Too heavy. Like the walls themselves were trying to contain something they could barely hold. I found my compartment, left my coat folded, and stood by the window as the train shuddered to life. Steam roared. Wheels groaned. The world blurred into streaks of rain. The Trans-Northern Express was underway. Samuel Harper, an old acquaintance of mine, had joined the ride as well, though not as a guest. He worked security for the company, his shoulders broad but his face marked by sleepless nights. He greeted me with the half-smile of a man who remembered too many things unsaid. "Pierce," he muttered. "You sure this is where you want to be?" "A moving prison of iron and velvet," I said. "I've been in worse." His laugh was short, dry, but not unkind. "Still, keep your eyes open. Something's off with this trip." "I don't like it." Neither did I. But I said nothing. The first hours passed with false peace. Dinner was extravagant, silver trays, roasted meats, rivers of wine. I mingled briefly, listening more than I spoke. There were merchants, aristocrats, a few officials, and one man who introduced himself as a historian, traveling to present his work on ancient burial rites. His presence alone soured my appetite. At midnight I returned to my compartment. The rain outside had thickened into a storm, pelting against the glass in relentless rhythm. The train plunged into a mountain pass, tunnels swallowing the carriages in darkness, lanterns flickering overhead. Somewhere in the distance, the music had stopped. That was when I heard it. A sound beneath the wheels. Too slow to be the grinding of iron, too wet to be stone. A dragging noise, like something crawling beneath the train itself. It followed us, scraping, pulling, as though the storm had a voice. I leaned closer to the window, straining against the rain. For a moment, as lightning split the sky, I saw something clinging to the side of the carriage. A shape, elongated, pale, too thin to be human, too real to be imagined. Its limbs bent wrong. Its mouth, if it was a mouth, hung open in a soundless wail. Then darkness swallowed it again. I tore the door open and stepped into the corridor, but the passage was empty. A faint draft stirred the curtains. At the far end, Samuel emerged, his lantern trembling in his hand. His face told me all I needed to know. He had seen something too. The train plunged deeper into the mountains. The storm roared above us, but I could no longer tell if the thunder was from the sky or from whatever had decided to ride with us. Something unnatural was here, and it was not hiding. The storm had worsened. Each flash of lightning cut across the mountains and bled through the train's windows, distorting the polished glass into 1,000 fractured images. The carriages shuddered with every gust, but the sounds I feared most were not born of thunder or storm. They came from within. Samuel reached me at the corridor, his lantern hissing softly in the draft. His jaw was set, but his eyes betrayed unease. "You heard it too?" he asked. "I heard it. I saw it," I said. "And I'd wager I wasn't the only one." He glanced toward the dining car. Behind its closed doors, silence pressed like a coffin lid. The quartet had stopped mid-performance, their final note frozen in the air. We exchanged no more words, only moved. The door to the dining car creaked as I pushed it open. What awaited inside was not what I expected. The room should have been alive with chatter, clinking glasses, music, laughter forced from polite throats. Instead, it was as if every sound had been swallowed whole. The passengers sat at their tables, but none moved. Their bodies stiff, their eyes vacant, staring straight ahead as though hypnotized. A roast lay untouched, its juices congealed on silver platters. Candles dripped wax unchecked. At the far table, the historian, Mr. Calloway, he had called himself, was the only one still moving. Slowly, methodically, he drew a line across the white tablecloth with the tip of his knife, murmuring words I could not hear. His lips worked soundlessly, yet the air around him seemed to vibrate, as if something older than language stirred in his whisper. "Calloway," I said, my voice firm. His head turned toward me with the stiffness of a corpse. His eyes were clouded, unfocused, but a grin split his lips. "It is awake," he croaked. "It walks the iron road." I moved forward, but Samuel caught my arm. "Look," he muttered. I followed his gaze. Beneath the tables, shadows bled unnaturally. Not from the candles, not from the lantern light. They stretched wrong, too long, too wide, like stains of oil spreading across the floor. They pulsed faintly, as though they were breathing. A passenger twitched suddenly, jerking as if strings had been tied to his limbs. He rose, not of his own will, but as though pulled upward by some invisible marionette. His mouth opened in a silent scream. From it poured a stream of black vapor, curling upward like smoke. Others followed. One by one, they convulsed, their jaws tearing open wider than flesh should allow, spilling the same dark mist. It gathered above the tables, coiling together into a mass that writhed against the ceiling like a storm cloud seeking form. Samuel swore under his breath and drew his revolver. I reached for the knife I had taken earlier from the serving cart, not because I believed it would help, but because steel in the hand is better than empty air. The historian's grin widened. "You cannot stop it. The train runs its course, and so does the hunger." The black cloud pressed downward, heavy, suffocating. I felt it claw at the edges of my thoughts, whispering in tongues I almost understood. It promised silence, rest, to stop fighting, to close my eyes. But I have looked into too many shadows to mistake rest for what it was, erasure. I lunged forward, seizing Calloway by the collar, slamming him onto the table. Plates shattered beneath him. His knife clattered to the floor. "What did you do?" I snarled. He laughed, but the sound was wet, gurgling. "I only spoke the names," he whispered. "The names buried in stone, beneath your feet even now. They heard me. They woke." The lamps flickered. The shadows quivered, thickened. And from outside, beyond the rain-smeared windows, something slammed against the side of the train. Hard. Metal screamed, glass rattled, passengers jerked like puppets in unison. Samuel fired. The shot cracked the silence, echoing off wood and brass. The bullet tore through the black mist, dispersing a small piece of it. But only a piece. The rest writhed, recoiled, and then surged again. The train lurched violently, as if struck from the outside. I staggered, barely keeping balance. In the chaos, Calloway slipped from my grasp, rolling onto the floor. He crawled to the door with unnatural speed, his body jerking as though pulled by strings. The door slammed behind him, leaving us with the suffocating dark. Passengers were collapsing one by one, their bodies lifeless but their mouths still pouring smoke. The mist pressed closer, its weight suffocating, pulling the air from my lungs. Then the lantern in Samuel's hand flared brighter than it should have, its flame stretching outward. The shadows recoiled at the light, shrieking soundlessly. For a heartbeat, we had space to breathe. "Light," I muttered. "It fears light." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Then we'd burn this damned palace on wheels if we have to." I nodded once. Together, we fought our way through the choking dark, dragging what passengers we could, forcing them toward the corridor. The train roared on through the storm, its whistle a hollow scream. And beneath the thunder, beneath the storm, I swore I heard something else. A second whistle. Not from the train ahead, but from something following. Something buried in shadow, racing alongside us through the night. The corridor outside was chaos. The passengers we dragged stumbled blindly, coughing from the choking residue of the black mist. Their faces were pale, lips cracked, eyes hollow as though they had been bled of something vital. Yet they breathed. That was enough for now. Samuel pushed them toward the sleeping car, barking orders like a sergeant on the battlefield. He turned back to me, his revolver still smoking faintly in his hand. "What in God's name was that?" he demanded. "Not God's name," I replied. "Something older. Something hungry." The historian's words nod at me, names buried in stone, beneath your feet even now. If true, the storm was not our only prison. The very ground we rode over was infested. The rails themselves had become a tether. Another slam shook the train, this time from the roof. Metal screeched. A passenger screamed from further down the corridor. The lights flickered again, and in that flicker I saw it, shadows dripping down the walls like oil, stretching toward us with clawed fingers. "Move!" I barked. We shoved forward into the baggage car. Luggage rattled violently as though alive, trunks and cases thudding against the walls. The overhead lamps buzzed, their glow too weak to keep the darkness at bay. Then I froze. There, in the far corner, crouched the historian. Calloway. His body convulsed, arms jerking at grotesque angles. Black veins pulsed beneath his skin, glowing faintly like molten cracks in stone. His mouth stretched wide, wider than bone should allow, and from within came that same guttural sound I had first heard from the cellar door in that cursed village months ago. He rose slowly, his spine bending in unnatural arcs. The shadows clung to him like a cloak, feeding, fusing. His eyes were pits now, hollow and endless. "Pierce." His voice was not his own anymore, layered, echoing as though spoken by many throats. "Do you hear them? They call your name too. The train carries us all into their mouth." Samuel lifted his revolver. "I'll end this bastard right now." But I held up a hand. "Bullets scatter the smoke, but they don't kill what drives it. Look at him, he's only a vessel." The historian laughed, the sound bubbling, wet. He took a staggering step forward. The shadows thickened around his feet, seeping across the baggage car floor like a tide. I yanked open a trunk beside me. Lantern oil sloshed inside a tin. I smashed it across the floor, soaking the wood. "Light drives them back. Fire ends them." Samuel understood at once. He struck a match, the flame trembling in his bloodied fingers. For a moment, Hesitation held him. The act of setting fire inside a train was madness. But then the historian screeched, lunging toward us, his hands now claws of shadow. Samuel dropped the match. The baggage car erupted. Fire raced across the oil, climbing the walls, licking the ceiling. The shadows shrieked in unison, recoiling violently. Calloway thrashed as the flames caught his coat, his flesh, his shadow-fused frame. His screams shook the car until his body collapsed into ash, leaving only a smear of darkness that quivered once, then vanished. The fire roared, too strong to stop now. We dragged what passengers remained conscious into the next car, choking on smoke, coughing through ash. Behind us, the baggage car burned like a furnace. The train carried the fire with it, a glowing wound cutting through the night. For a moment, just a moment, the air cleared. The suffocating mist withdrew. But peace is a liar. From outside, the second whistle returned. Louder. Closer. It was not the voice of any train made by men. It howled through the storm with a pitch that curdled blood, and every window of the carriage rattled as if struck. I pressed my face to the glass. At first, all I saw was rain and lightning. But then, there, alongside us, something ran. Not on legs. Not on wheels. It shifted, lengthened, its form a blur of smoke and bone. It kept pace with the train, sliding through the storm with ease, its eyes glowing faintly like furnace embers. Each time lightning split the sky, its shape flickered, sometimes a beast, sometimes a mass of writhing bodies, sometimes nothing at all. And in the darkness of the car, passengers began to stir again, their mouths twitching open, ready to pour smoke once more. The storm was not the threat. The thing chasing us was. Samuel leaned close, whispering through clenched teeth. "We can't outrun that, Pierce." "No," I agreed. My eyes lingered on the flames raging behind us. "But maybe we can outburn it." And as the Trans-Northern Express hurtled into the Black Mountains, I began to understand the truth. This was not simply a train ride gone wrong. It was a hunt. And we were the quarry. The train rattled harder with every passing mile. The wheels screamed against the tracks as though the metal itself resisted carrying us forward. Passengers pressed against each other in terrified silence, their faces half lit by the fire still raging in the baggage car behind us. The conductor stumbled toward me, his uniform scorched, his cap missing. His voice trembled. "Detective Pierce, we've got to uncouple the cars. If we don't, the flames will spread, and we'll all be burned alive." Samuel swore under his breath. "He's right." I scanned the corridor. The baggage car's flames licked closer, sparks showering from the doorway. But abandoning it would leave us lighter, faster, easier prey for the thing outside. And then the whistle came again. That impossible shriek. Windows shattered along the carriage, glass spraying inward like daggers. The storm surged through, rain and wind blasting us. And in the chaos, every candle, every lantern flickered weakly. Shadows crept back across the walls. The entity had returned. "Pierce!" Samuel barked. "Decision, now!" I grabbed the conductor by the collar, pulling him close so my words wouldn't vanish in the storm. "Uncouple it. But listen carefully, we cannot stop this train. We must keep moving, no matter what." He nodded, face pale, and staggered away with two surviving brakemen. Samuel spat rainwater, glaring at me. "You think fire alone can hold that thing back?" "No," I said. My fingers traced the rough spine of Calloway's scorched journal, half salvaged from the flames. The pages were warped and blackened, but words still clung to them. Blood is the lock. Fire is the key. Stone is the prison. I wasn't sure if I believed it. But in this storm, Belief was all that kept men alive. The coupling clanged. The baggage car was cut loose, its burning bulk lagging behind as the train lurched forward. A cheer rippled weakly through the passengers. For a moment, it seemed the flames would vanish into the storm. But then, lightning split the sky. And the thing was there. It towered above the burning car, its shape stretched into something monstrous. Not man, not beast, its body writhed as if woven of countless wriggling forms. It plunged skeletal hands into the blazing wreck, dragging the fire into itself like breath. The flames vanished inside its body, swallowed whole. Its eyes glowed brighter, its mouth opened wider. The cheer died instantly. I clutched Samuel's arm. It feeds on destruction. Fire doesn't kill it, it strengthens it. Then what the hell does? He demanded. I looked at the journal again, its charred words whispering back. Stone is the prison. The great northern rails had been laid through ground soaked with forgotten rituals, graves disturbed, hills carved open. Had the builders known what they unleashed? Or had greed blinded them until their very trains became offerings to something ancient? Another scream tore the night as a passenger near the shattered windows was ripped away into the storm. We barely glimpsed her silhouette before she vanished into the black. I forced myself to act. Samuel, get the passengers to the dining car. Seal every door, every window you can. Keep light burning, candles, lanterns, anything. If that thing gets inside again, it won't leave survivors. And you? I'll speak to it. Samuel stared at me as though I'd lost my mind. Perhaps I had. But this hunt wasn't random. It had whispered my name already. And if it wanted me, perhaps that gave the others a chance. I pushed forward through the rain-soaked corridor, out onto the narrow platform between cars. Wind ripped at my coat, rain stung my face like needles. And there, pacing alongside the train through the storm, the creature moved with an awful grace. Its body was smoke and bone and writhing shapes, yet its eyes locked on me, aware, intelligent. I raised my voice against the storm. You've hunted this train long enough. You want me? Then take me. But leave them. The thing slowed, its form shifting, compressing, as though focusing. The air grew cold enough to freeze breath in seconds. My vision swam. The journal's words burned in my mind again. Blood is the lock. Fire is the key. The creature's mouth opened, a cavern of shifting faces within, and in a voice like 1,000 souls drowning at once, it answered. Pierce. And then it leapt. The train buckled as the weight struck it from the side. Wood splintered, iron screeched, passengers screamed. I was thrown to the floor of the platform, rain and glass cutting into my skin. And as I scrambled to rise, the shadows rose with me, curling into my ears, my eyes, my lungs. The hunt had ended. The possession had begun. The shadows poured into me like smoke forced down my throat. My vision blurred, the world twisting, bending, until the storm outside and the terrified passengers inside melted together into a single, pulsing nightmare. I staggered to my knees, clutching at my chest. My hands were no longer entirely my own, veins blackened, tendons writhing like worms under the skin. My breath came in ragged gasps, but each exhale carried not only air, but whispers. Voices not mine. Samuel's shout broke through the chaos. Pierce! Hold on! He tried to reach me, but the storm itself rose like a wall, wind and shadows slamming him back against the door. The thing wanted me alone. It was no longer stalking me, it was inside me. The journal's words rang louder in my skull. Blood is the lock. Fire is the key. Stone is the prison. But whose blood? Whose fire? I forced my eyes open. The creature's face, or faces, hung inches from mine, its form twisting into shapes I recognized, victims from other cases, people I had failed, their mouths opening and closing in endless screams. "You are mine now," it hissed, a chorus layered over thunder. "Your shadow belongs to me." I gritted my teeth, fighting the pressure. "Not yet." I staggered backward into the car. Passengers gasped as they saw me, some crossing themselves, others shrinking away. A little boy whispered to his mother, "He's turning." And maybe he was right. Every step I took left a smear of shadow behind, footprints that lingered like burns. My reflection in the cracked glass of a window was wrong. My eyes glowed faintly, my face blurred at the edges. Samuel forced his way through the crowd, gripping my shoulders. His hands trembled, but he didn't let go. "Pierce, listen to me. Fight it. Whatever it's doing to you, you've beaten worse." I almost laughed. Beaten worse? Nothing in alleys, deserts, or ruined towns compared to this. This wasn't a man to catch or a monster to shoot. This was something that lived between the beats of the world, and now it had chosen me as its vessel. "Samuel," I rasped, "if I lose control, you have to end it. Don't hesitate." He looked at me with horror. "Don't you dare ask me that." The lights in the car flickered, then died, plunging us into pitch black. Gasps, screams, the shuffle of bodies, then silence. And then, in the dark, my own voice spoke. Not from me. From the thing inside me. "Do you want to know what the tracks remember, Pierce? Do you want to hear the prayers buried under every sleeper, every nail, every stone?" The passengers cried out as the walls of the car began to bleed, not with water, but with shadows that dripped downward, forming pools on the floor. Faces writhed in those pools, silent, reaching up with desperate hands. I clutched my head, trying to block the voices, but they surged harder. Visions struck me, builders breaking sacred earth to lay the line, rituals disturbed, bodies entombed within the foundations of tunnels. The railway was a graveyard, and the train was nothing but a sacrificial blade. The journal's words burned again. "Stone is the prison." The creature had been trapped before, sealed under rock, buried alive. But now the railway had cut open the scar, and the train's endless motion gave it passage. I fell to my knees, trembling. The passengers screamed, but their voices were distant. The only sound that mattered was the thing inside me, whispering, coaxing. "Give in, Pierce. You are weary. You have hunted shadows too long. Let me wear your face. Let me finish your work." For a moment, I almost wanted to surrender. To let someone else carry the burden. But then Samuel's hand gripped mine, grounding me. His voice, low and furious, cut through the storm. "You're not done yet, Pierce. Don't you dare hand yourself over." The thing hissed, recoiling, but I felt its claws still deep in my chest. It would not leave willingly. My only chance was to use it, to turn its hunger against itself. But that would mean letting it stay longer. Risking more. I rose slowly, shadows still dripping from my skin, and faced the terrified crowd. "Get to the front of the train," I commanded, my voice layered with something not entirely human. "Seal yourselves in. Leave me here." A murmur of refusal rippled through them. But Samuel understood. He began ushering them forward, his jaw set, his eyes locked on me like a tether. The creature laughed through me, a guttural echo that shook the glass. "Yes, Pierce. Be alone. You and I, we will ride this night together." The train thundered on into the storm, and I felt the boundary between my mind and its claws begin to fray. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was a possession. A war for who would step off the train when dawn came, if dawn came at all. The storm outside howled, hammering the train like fists on a coffin lid. Inside, the shadows coiled tighter around me, thickening until the aisle itself seemed to ripple with liquid night. Every breath was borrowed. Every heartbeat a negotiation. I leaned against the wall, fighting to steady myself. The thing inside me shifted, probing, testing. It wanted the reins, and my resistance only fed its hunger. From the far end of the car, Samuel's voice carried over the din. "Pierce! You're stronger than this thing. Don't let it own you." His faith was a weight, both anchor and burden. I wanted to believe him, but the shadows in my veins whispered otherwise. "Samuel," I croaked, "get them further up the train. If this gets worse, I'm not leaving you." His defiance cracked through the fear in the air. Passengers huddled behind him, faces pale, eyes wide with terror. They looked at me as though I were both their savior and their executioner. The glass beside me shattered, wind and rain blasting in. But instead of water, black tendrils slid inside, dragging across the floorboards, snaking toward me like veins returning to their host. And then, as if taunting me, the train's lights surged back on. Every seat was filled. Not with the living passengers I had seen moments before, but with husks. Their faces hollow, their eyes black pits, their mouths open in eternal screams. Shadows draped them like burial shrouds. I blinked, shaking my head. The vision wavered, but it didn't vanish. The thing laughed through me, voice spilling from my throat like oil. "See them, Pierce? See what they'll become. You can't save them. You can't even save yourself." I slammed my fist against the wall. "Enough!" Pain shot up my arm, but so did clarity. The journal's words, "Fire is the key." In that moment, I understood. Fire wasn't just destruction. Fire was purification. Fire was light. I tore a lantern from the wall, smashing the glass to expose the flame. It sputtered in the storm wind, fragile but alive. The creature recoiled instantly, shadows hissing, retreating like worms in salt. The passengers gasped as the hallucinations wavered, the husks dissolving back into flesh and blood, men and women, terrified but alive. Samuel's eyes widened with sudden hope. "Pierce, it's afraid of the light." "Yes," I growled, holding the lantern higher. "Afraid of fire." But it wasn't victory. Not yet. The shadows hissed louder, furious, and the train groaned as if the entity itself had sunk into the steel bones of the cars. The lights overhead flickered violently, some bursting in showers of sparks. The lantern's flame guttered under the unnatural wind. The creature shrieked through me, twisting my body, bending my spine backward until I thought it would snap. Its voice roared like thunder. "Burn yourself, then. Burn them all. Fire is mine, too." I clenched my teeth, forcing myself upright. "You're not in control. Not while I breathe." Samuel moved closer, clutching another lantern he had wrenched from the wall. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but he lifted it anyway. "Then we burn it together." The entity howled inside me, slamming against my ribs, trying to split me apart. I felt blood trickle from my nose, my ears, my eyes. My body couldn't hold much longer. But with every step Samuel took, with every flame we lit, the shadows weakened. They hissed and recoiled, shrinking from the light, the grotesque faces twisting in silent agony. And then, I heard something new. Beneath the roar, beneath the whispers. A rhythm. A heartbeat. But not mine. Not the passengers. The train itself. The thing wasn't just in me. It was in the engine, in the rails, in the very motion that carried us through the night. The lanterns could drive it back, but only fire on a greater scale could break its grip entirely. I gripped Samuel's arm, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. We have to reach the engine. The fire has to start there. That's its heart. His face hardened, though his voice shook. And if it takes you before then you finish it, I said. No hesitation. He nodded once, grimly. The passengers were pushed forward, herded into the next car, their terrified prayers echoing against the steel. Samuel and I stayed behind, 2 lanterns burning weakly in the storm-ravaged dark, the only thing holding the shadows back. The creature hissed inside me, venomous and cold. You won't make it, Pierce. Every step forward will bleed you dry. When you fall, I'll wear your skin to greet them all at dawn. I spat blood onto the floorboards and lifted the lantern higher. Then I'll make sure dawn never comes for you. And with that, Samuel and I forced the door open to the next car, the storm howling in as shadows twisted and clawed, and we began the march toward the engine, the only chance to end this nightmare before it claimed us all. The door slammed behind us, sealing off the terrified passengers and the relative safety of the rear cars. Ahead stretched another length of the train, dim lanterns flickering along the walls. For a moment, it seemed quieter here, too quiet. No whispers, no shifting shadows. Just the hollow groan of the wheels against the tracks. But the silence was wrong. Stay sharp, I muttered. Samuel nodded, gripping his lantern like a weapon, his knuckles white. We moved forward. The floor creaked underfoot, the wood damp and warped from the storm that had forced its way in through shattered windows. The smell of iron hung thick in the air, iron and rot. Halfway down the car I froze. Every seat was occupied. Not by the passengers we had escorted forward. These were others. Dozens of them, dressed in clothes from decades past, rail uniforms, traveling coats, old bonnets. Their bodies were rigid, faces pale, lips split and cracked. Their eyes were closed as though in sleep. Samuel hissed a breath. What in God's name? Don't wake them, I said. My voice came out lower than I intended, almost a growl. As if hearing me, one of the corpses twitched. Its head rolled to the side, eyelids snapping open to reveal black voids where eyes should be. The rest stirred with it, like puppets tugged by invisible strings. The car erupted in motion. They rose in jerks, spines bending at impossible angles, mouths gaping in silent screams. The air grew heavier, shadows thickening, pressing down on us. I raised my lantern. The flame flared, and the dead recoiled, shrieking soundlessly, their bodies collapsing back into the seats. For a heartbeat, I thought we'd force them still. But then they began to crawl. Hands clawed the aisle, nails tearing up the boards as they dragged themselves toward us, bodies bending and folding unnaturally, bones snapping with each movement. Their mouths opened wider, wider, until their jaws cracked, black sludge spilling from their throats. Pierce! Samuel shouted. I swung the lantern hard, smashing it against one of the creatures. Fire leapt across its chest, and it convulsed, shrieking as it burned. The others shrank back, but only for a moment. The creature inside me laughed, twisting in my ribs. Burn them, burn yourself, burn everything. The train is mine. Run! I barked, shoving Samuel toward the far door. We sprinted, flames crackling at our heels as the corpses hurled themselves forward. One clamped a hand around my coat, pulling me backward. I smashed the lantern into its skull, shattering glass and bone in the same motion. It howled, collapsing in a heap of fire. But in that instant, the flame guttered out. Darkness surged in. The shadows pressed tighter, thicker, suffocating. My chest seized, the thing inside me surging to claim the gap. I nearly collapsed, until Samuel yanked me forward, his lantern blazing a weak path through the dark. Come on, he shouted. We burst through the far door just as the last of the corpses hurled itself at us, its hands snapping shut on empty air as the door slammed. I leaned against the wall, chest heaving, blood on my lips. The thing inside me seethed, furious, wounded by the fire. But it was still there, whispering, waiting. Samuel pressed his lantern into my hand. "Yours is gone. Don't lose this one." I nodded. My voice was hoarse when I spoke. "The engine. That's where this ends." The next car loomed before us, its door rattling under the storm. From beyond came faint sounds, footsteps, dragging chains, whispers that weren't quite human. We weren't alone. And each car we crossed pulled us closer to the heart of the nightmare. I tightened my grip on the lantern, ignoring the pain in my body, ignoring the thing writhing inside me. One step closer. One car nearer. And I swore to myself, if the train was the coffin, then I would be the fire that burned it clean. The next door opened into darkness so thick it swallowed the lantern light whole. I raised the flame higher, and the gloom retreated only a little, clinging to the corners like tar. Samuel stepped in behind me, his hand clutching the small cross that hung from his neck. The car was different. No rows of seats, no luggage racks. Instead, iron cages lined the walls, their bars bent, twisted outward as though something had forced its way free. The smell hit me then, putrid, wet, sharp with decay. Chains dragged across the floor ahead. A steady, scraping rhythm, as if something was pacing. We moved slowly, the lantern casting long shadows across the cages. Inside, bones lay in heaps, human, animal, hard to tell. Some were old, brittle, others fresh, marrow still glistening. Scraps of clothing clung to them, fragments of uniforms, dresses, even a child's shoe. A whisper rippled through the air. Not from me, not from Samuel. From the shadows themselves. Closer. The chain rattled again, louder. Then I saw it. At the far end of the car, hunched in the gloom, was a figure in a conductor's uniform. His hat sat crooked on his head, his face hidden beneath a curtain of matted hair. His body swayed with each movement of the chain that dragged from his wrists. Samuel's voice was tight. "Is he alive?" "No," I said, because I could see the truth now. His chest did not rise. His flesh sagged, half-rotted, his skin stretched over blackened bone. His eyes lifted, two hollow pits glowing faintly with red fire. He smiled, and when he did, his jaw split wider than humanly possible, stretching until it nearly tore his head in two. The lantern flickered violently. The conductor's voice came, deep and guttural, layered with something older, not of this world. "Passengers must remain seated. All aboard for the final destination." He lunged. The chain lashed forward, snapping through the air like a whip. I threw Samuel back, the iron striking the boards where we'd stood, splitting them in a shower of splinters. I raised the lantern high, the flame blazing, and for an instant the conductor recoiled, smoke rising from his skin. But he didn't fall. He only laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You burn one, another takes its place. This train does not stop, detective. Not for you. Not for God." The chain lashed again, wrapping around my arm, searing cold burning into my flesh. I bit down a cry, wrenching against it. The thing inside me surged, thrilled by the pain, urging me to surrender, to let it take control. Samuel grabbed a fallen length of wood from one of the cages, smashing it down on the chain. The conductor shrieked, staggering back, his voice echoing like 1,000 screams. The lantern light flared brighter, spilling across the cages. And in that moment, I saw the carvings. Symbols etched into the wood, into the very bones themselves. Ancient markings, repeating one phrase over and over. A vessel. A vessel. A vessel. The truth struck like ice. The train wasn't just cursed, it was a container. Every passenger, every corpse, every whisper in the dark was fuel for it. And the conductor was its keeper. I tore the chain from my arm, skin ripping with it. Blood ran hot down my sleeve, but I forced myself forward, lantern raised. The conductor's jaw snapped open again, a howl tearing from his throat. "Closer," he said again, voice rattling the bones in their cages. "Closer to the engine. Closer to the heart." I hurled the lantern. The flame burst across his chest, fire racing along his uniform. He staggered, screaming, flailing, the chains writhing like living snakes. The cages caught fire, bones cracking, smoke pouring upward. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted for the far door as the car burned behind us, the conductor's shrieks chasing us into the next length of darkness. But even as the fire raged, even as the wood splintered and the bones blackened, his voice echoed still, carried on the wheels and the rails and the storm outside. "You're only stoking the furnace, detective. The engine waits for you." We slammed the door shut behind us, the roar of flames muffled, though the echoes of the conductor's laughter still rattled through the walls. Samuel clutched his side, coughing smoke, eyes wide with terror. "This isn't a train," he gasped. "It's a coffin. A moving coffin." "No," I said, catching my breath. "It's worse. It's a mouth. And we're walking deeper into the throat." The car we entered was nothing like the others. For a fleeting second, I thought we had stumbled into a grand dining carriage. A chandelier hung from the ceiling, dripping with crystalline light. Long tables stretched the length of the car, set with fine china, silver cutlery, goblets filled with wine. The smell of roasted meat wafted through the air. But then my eyes adjusted. The chandelier wasn't crystal, it was bone, strung together with veins still slick and pulsing. The tablecloths weren't white, they were flayed skin, stretched taut, stitched at the corners. The goblets overflowed, not with wine, but with blood, thick and warm, steaming in the cold air. And the meat. God help me, the meat still twitched. A full banquet, laid out and waiting. Samuel gagged, stumbling back. What is this?" "The feast," I said. My voice was hollow. "Every vessel needs fuel. And this is what feeds it." A murmur rose then, like the clinking of cutlery. I turned, and the tables were no longer empty. They were filled with passengers. Dozens of them, dressed in finery, heads bowed. Men, women, children. Pale, motionless. Until they lifted their heads in unison. Every face was hollow, eyes sunken, mouths stretched wide. Blood poured from their lips as they smiled. And together they spoke, no sound, no words, only the wet gurgle of 100 throats choking on the same invisible noose. The sound became a scream. The banquet erupted. Dishes shattered, chairs toppled, bodies lunged. Pale hands reached across the tables, fingers snapping like claws. "Move!" I shouted. We sprinted down the aisle, knocking goblets and plates aside. Hands clawed at our arms, our throats, our hair. I smashed one figure with my elbow, and his skull collapsed like rotted fruit. But still he clawed forward, jaw gnashing with teeth that weren't teeth at all but nails, jagged and rusted. Samuel cried out, dragged sideways by one of the diners. The creature sank its teeth into his shoulder. He screamed, thrashing. I tore a knife from the table, a gleaming silver blade, and plunged it through the diner's skull. Black ichor sprayed, hissing as it hit the floorboards. The corpse convulsed and collapsed, twitching, then went still. I pulled Samuel up. His face was pale, sweat running down his temple. Keep moving, I told him. No matter what. The car trembled as we reached the far door. The chandelier of bone swung wildly above us, dropping fragments of marrow that shattered like glass on the floor. Behind us, the passengers shrieked in unison. Not human voices, something else. Something deeper. Pierce. My name. Over and over. A chorus, like the train itself calling me forward. We burst through the door into the next car, slamming it shut. This one was small, narrow, dimly lit. Only a single bench ran along the wall. And sitting on it was a woman. She was beautiful. Radiant. Long black hair, porcelain skin, eyes that glimmered like stars. She wore a dress of deep crimson silk, her hands folded neatly in her lap. But I knew the truth the moment I saw her. Because the air around her hummed with the same energy as the cages, the conductor, the feast. She smiled softly, tilting her head. "Detective Pierce," she said, her voice velvet smooth. "I've been waiting." My blood froze. She knew my name. The train groaned, as if it were bowing to her will. This wasn't another victim. This wasn't another phantom. This was the heart. The true face of the curse. The woman's eyes fixed on me, calm, patient, and impossibly ancient. Behind her softness was something I could not measure. Something older than the wood, the steel, the very rails the train clung to. "Pierce," she repeated, almost tender. "You've carried the shadows for so long. You step into darkness willingly, bearing truths that should never be touched. You think this train is different. It isn't. It is simply what waits for all of you, in the end." Samuel staggered beside me, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Don't listen," he rasped. "She's not real." "Not real?" Her smile deepened. "And what are you, boy?" "Flesh wrapped around fear. That is all any of you are." The air in the car thickened, pressing against my chest. The wood groaned as if suffocating. The lights above us flickered, then went dark. Only her face remained illuminated, though no flame, no bulb gave it light. "Why me?" I demanded, my voice hard. "Why drag me here? Why call my name?" Her eyes gleamed black and endless. "Because you are not like the rest." They drowned quietly. "You resist. You push against the tide. That makes you interesting. That makes you worth tasting." She rose from the bench. Her body lengthened, stretched, skin pulling taut like fabric too thin. Her jaw unhinged, wider and wider, teeth like broken shards lining her throat. Her crimson dress melted, flowing like liquid down her legs, pooling on the floor and spreading, blood, thick and alive, crawling toward us like a tide. The train shook violently. Screams erupted in the cars behind us, passengers, or what remained of them. The sound rolled forward, a wave of agony closing in. Samuel gasped. We have to get out." "There's no out," she said, voice reverberating, filling every corner of the car. "The train goes forward. Always forward. Until the end of the line." The blood reached my boots, hot, searing. I stumbled back, gripping Samuel. But the door behind us had vanished, replaced with smooth, endless wood. No escape. Her form grew taller, towering, her head brushing the ceiling. Her face was gone, replaced with a mass of gnashing mouths. The crimson tide surged higher, waist deep, chest deep, dragging us down. Samuel screamed, clawing at me, his face pale with terror. "Pierce, do something!" I closed my eyes, fighting the rising panic. No case is unsolvable. No shadow is endless. That was my creed. My anchor. And even here, swallowed by nightmare, I clung to it. The silver knife, I still held it, slick with black ichor from the feast. I raised it, gripping it tight. You want me? I shouted. Then choke on me. I drove the blade into the blood itself. The car screamed. Not the woman, the train. The walls rippled like flesh. The floor buckled. The windows shattered, spilling night into the torrent. Her form convulsed, shrieking, mouths gnashing in every direction. The blood recoiled, pulling away, as if the knife's touch had burned it. I slashed again and again. Each strike tore through the liquid, unraveling the crimson tide into smoke, ash, nothingness. Her towering form stumbled, collapsing in on itself, shrinking, folding, until only the woman remained, kneeling, eyes blazing with hate. You cannot end me, she hissed. I am the hunger in every shadow. I am the scream between breaths. I will return. I always return. I pressed the knife against her throat. My hand trembled, not with fear, but fury. Then I'll be here, I said. Every time. And I cut. Her body dissolved like ash in the wind. The car split with a thunderous crack. Light, blinding, white, searing, erupted around us. I felt myself falling, Samuel's scream vanishing into the void. The train, the passengers, the blood, the mouths, all gone. Only silence. Then, I woke. Not in the car. Not in the void. But in my own bed. The morning sun spilled across my floor. My coat hung by the door. The silver knife rested on my nightstand, clean, polished, as though it had never been touched. For a long time, I lay there, listening to the silence, trying to convince myself it had been nothing but a dream. But when I sat up, I saw it. On the nightstand, beside the knife, was a train ticket. Destination, end of the line. Unstamped. Waiting. And in the silence of the room, faint but undeniable, I heard it. The whistle of a train. Calling me back.